of the R&R Mama Show. I'm your host, Andrea Fallon, midwife, child health nurse, NDC practitioner, and mum of two. And I'm sorry, I'm like an hour late today. I've had such a hectic week and I just needed a bit more time to prepare for the show today. So I'm very sorry about that for those who wanted to come live and running so late. Anyway, I'm here now and I'm excited about this topic because it's something I feel like people don't talk about very often. And I'd really like to share some insights I have on working in this industry for quite a long time now. I do feel like I'm getting quite old. But anyway, we will dive right in. So let me, I'd love this to be interactive as well because I don't want it to be like a lecture. So please do just put any comments, any questions in the chat, and I will definitely come back and, make it more like a discussion. Cool. So in this episode of the R&R Mama Show, I'm going to share my opinion on the reasons why some of our health systems are failing mums and the actions you can take to set yourself up for success in this stage of your life. So I realised after working in this field for 15 years that the industry I've built my career in and love is unfortunately in many ways failing mums. And I think it's important to have the discussion with you so that you can recognise these gaps and then have some insight and some ideas on how you can find ways to fill them for yourself, for your own journey, so that you can have the best experience possible. So I've been a midwife for 16 years now and a child health nurse for 15 years. And I've spent the last 3 years working specifically in the area of feeding, baby and toddler sleep. And I've always had a particular interest in and passion for maternal mental health. And I've spent most of my career working in the public system in a high-risk maternity hospital. And I've also worked in community-based maternal and child health government clinics. I've worked privately in the maternity system and been in private practice for 3 years. And I've also worked in rural and city environments. So it's safe to say that I've been around and have a pretty good understanding of the health system, especially here in WA, but it's pretty similar across Australia. So I think this all applies across Australia, probably quite different if you're watching in America or even the UK. But what I'm going to share today are really my own opinions based on my experience, and others might not agree, and that's okay. I'm not here to criticize my colleagues at all. They do an amazing job in often really challenging circumstances. But there are systems and structures in place that are letting mums down. And so that's what I want to talk about. Now, the midwife in me could talk for days about our maternity system and what I love to see change when it comes to birthing, right? That's a whole nother topic. I'm not going to talk about that today because most of you in here are mums, with little ones. So we're going to focus on that postnatal care aspect, where most of you are at. So let's get into it. I just want to see if there's anyone. Nope, no comments yet. Please do feel free to write a comment or question. Cool. So what challenges are new mums facing at the moment? Well, it's a sad state of affairs, to be honest. We know that there's high levels of postpartum depression and anxiety. The stats are around 20%, just roughly. There's quite a variation, but around 20%. We've got low breastfeeding rates, and why this is a problem is because it's actually most mums are saying they want to breastfeed, and then the stats are showing from when they're discharged from hospital, the rates just drop off dramatically. So it's an issue when we've got mums saying, I really want to breastfeed, and then it's not happening. And then we've got high numbers of parents who are reporting challenges with their baby sleep. I can't actually remember the stat off the top of my head. I didn't have time to look it up, but it was huge, the amount of parents who were reporting, I've got real challenges with sleep. So we've got a number of challenges happening here. Why is this? Well, lots of reasons, obviously. But let's look at the health system to start. I think most of us are probably aware of some of these issues because they are in the media a lot. But I'll just, just for the sake of having some background information, I'll go through it. So obviously we've got hospitals that are really busy at the moment, so short-staffed. Mums are discharged before they're even feeling confident with, like, especially with feeding, often going home and they're still not even established with feeding. And there's really little preparation for mums for what's ahead with motherhood. It's really, like focused on the birth. Yep, you're all good. Yep, right, out you go. And then the maternal and child health services that are there to kind of pick up from that have had funding cuts. There's less visits now than there used to be, and there's often in months in between visits. Or if you can't, if you want to go in between the visits, then it might just be a real quick check-in type thing. We don't have it there to provide that need for that more intense support. Very limited lactation consultant positions in the hospital or community in terms of like funded positions. As I'm sure you know, if you've ever tried to get support with breastfeeding, you almost always have to hire someone privately. It's very hard to get help through the hospital or through like child health clinics. Very limited psychological support services in the hospital. And then once you're discharged, what's in the community is really more targeted for mums who are quite unwell or really struggling, as opposed to the things that could be keeping people well and that health promotion side of things. And look, that's just health across the board. The funding just isn't there for those preventative type things. It's always, more heavily emphasized around people who once they're having problems. So that's all stuff that I think probably most of us know, right? One of the bigger issues that isn't spoken about so much is the inadequate training of health professionals to actually help you as mums. So there's a heavy emphasis when it comes to training on the hospital environment. When you go through training as a health professional, a lot of the time it's this emphasis on, that clinical, that high risk, and you understand that, like, people need to be competent if they're looking after people who are unwell or, make sure that it's a safe environment. When it comes to training for community settings, mostly they're like, just here's some screening tools, we'll train you up on using the screening tools, and then here's the advice. Sorry, just 1 minute, I've got to let my dog out. I have a dog walker and she just arrived. So we've got this emphasis around these screening tools and then advice, and it's an approach that I think really positions that care provider as the expert. And I think that leaves a lot to be desired. There is a lot of talk about having families at the centre of care and helping families to work out what they need and then making that the focus. That is spoken about. But I'm yet to see widespread training on how to actually coach families when it comes to improving their situation. It really is this advice giving. And the days of the expert, I think, are so, we're past that now. As mums, we have access to so much more information than ever before, and we're more informed now than ever before. And that's not to say that we should discount the opinions of health professionals or that we should just go with what Facebook says instead of like what your doctor says. But I think the way of the future is really looking at the whole family, looking at their needs, looking at it holistically, and not just like giving out this advice, well, stock standard advice, but also just like, well, this is what you need to do, rather than what do you think you need, and let's work together to come up with some solutions. And so that's for anyone working in this field, GPs, child health nurses, lactation consultants, sleep consultants. The term consultant itself, I think, is a bit problematic because it's the idea of the expert, they're the consultant. And I think that has to be taken into consideration when with working with families, is that perhaps actually do we really need to move more towards a coaching model and mentoring type approach rather than this whole expert consultant type dynamic that's going on. So the downside of mums having more access to information is that information overload has become a massive challenge, and I see this every day. And the current approach where mums attend clinics, they're being handed out some pamphlets, sent on their way, is just not cutting it anymore. That's the old way. We need to get away from that. We need to recognise that mums are feeling so overloaded with information. And I'm sure you know this as a mum watching this. And so I'll get to this in a sec about some strategies around this. We need to move away from that just, hand out the pamphlet. We need to recognize that it's just information overload out there. So as well as all of this, unfortunately, there are also a lot of gaps in the research in this space. So, in the postnatal space, working with mums and bubs. And that's because funding is really limited. And so what you see, in my opinion, because to fill the gap, I guess you could say, where the research is lacking, is that sometimes professionals actually add their own personal opinions in based on their own personal parenting experiences, rather than sticking with just, this is what we know, this is what we don't know, you need to find your way from there, and coaching people through that. We instead just see people injecting their own personal advice in. And ideas from the past are really culturally ingrained, and they tend to be passed on generation to generation, and then it becomes like a truth for that person. It's very powerful. And so I see this a lot. I think this happens a lot in child health, is that some of the research that the ideas are based on, firstly, is very outdated, and then oftentimes you will get people putting their own personal things into it. And so that makes it really hard for mums to know what is the right information. So how do you set yourself up for success then? Well, given the gaps in the system that I've mentioned, I think it's really good to find support early, look for support, the types of support you might need, and explore that and try and access it early. So don't leave it too late to when you're really having problems, and don't just expect that you will get the support you need through the main system that you're going through. For example, just that maternity hospital and then the local clinic, that might lack what you actually need. So if you have a look for local IBCLCs, for example, look for programs and professionals who work in various fields who can help you if you need it. And while there's always the temptation, I think, to buy the really cute baby stuff when you're pregnant and go all out and just buy the best of this and the best of that, I think it would actually serve you a lot better to start a little fund or put aside that money instead for any additional support you might need postnatally. Because unfortunately, that's how the system is, and you will likely need to look for help privately for something. So having a coach or mentor in the early years for whatever it is, feeding, sleep, parenting, it's an investment that I don't think you can put a price on, because we never get these years back. And who wants to look back and feel like they spent the whole time struggling? So I think this is just such, something that we as mums need to recognize and be aware of so that we can set ourselves up for success. Let me just flip back and see if I've got any comments here. Cool. So now I think the next thing is that we really need to search for progressive professionals whose philosophy aligns with our own. So if you're looking in the public system, it is a bit trickier, but you can maybe jump onto baby forums online and just see what What are other mums saying about people in your area, maybe in your local Facebook group? Ask mums, like, how did you find this clinic? What, do you have somewhere that you would suggest? And really search in those local forums, if possible, to find someone that is going to be a good fit for you. If you're looking privately, go to their website, check their social media, do their philosophies align with your values? Do you know your values? I mean, that's step one. If you don't know what kind of things are important to you as a mum, how are you going to seek out the right support for you? If it's really important to you not to leave your baby to cry, for example, if you don't know that and you're just thinking, I just need the sleep, how are you going to find the right professional that's actually going to support you? And unfortunately, sometimes I see mums who someone's made them feel worse because they've given them that advice that really goes against their values. So we need to know the values to start with, and then we can look for the right person whose philosophy aligns with that. And don't be afraid to ask a professional, like, what do you think about X, Y, Z? What's your beliefs about this? And really try and find the right fit for you. Now, the postnatal space is rife with outdated information and advice, and so sometimes it is hard to know what's right when it comes down, and it comes back to knowing your values. So if someone's giving you some advice and you're just not sure if it's right, I would say, okay, well, let's just sit with it. How does it feel in my body? Does it make me feel stressed, or does it make me go, oh, okay, yep, that sounds like something I could try? And you can do this for any advice, actually, but that's often just a good gauge of, like, okay, is this the right support for me? Is this the right person for me? Is this advice sitting well for me? And finally, if possible, just check the credentials of anyone who's offering you advice. There's a lot of people working in this space who, like I said, are unfortunately offering outdated advice or perhaps even some of their own personal opinions, but definitely there's a lot of misinformation out there. So find someone who is suitably qualified. And an example, this is definitely the sleep space, and I've spoken about this quite a bit before. You could go to someone who's done a 3-month certification. I don't even know where the certification came from, or you could go to a health professional who's done like postgraduate studies in the field and get the qualified support. So I hope you found that helpful. I hope that gives you, a few ideas of how to find the right support for you, where to look for information, and just fill those gaps that I think are really unfortunately there and lacking for that support for mums in all of those areas: the feeding, sleep, mental health, and have a really good experience for yourself by sorting out what you need and being proactive. I think it's a really important part of it. Cool. Well, thanks for coming, and I will chat to you all later. If you've got any questions or comments, do put them in on the post and I will get back to you. Otherwise, have a good day. Bye.